And I'm better off now in recovery after addiction than I was before I even developed an addiction problem to begin with. You know what I mean? Like after the fact, it's almost like I'm more grateful to be me after going through all that than had it never happened at all. And that led to the second half of my life of being on social media and sharing my mental health experiences and addiction experiences, finding the correlation between addiction and ADHD and finding out about my ADHD diagnosis and learning more about myself that way. And that all led to White Flag.
Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. I'm your host, Hale, and this is Point of Impact. Today's guest is Brave Dave Frank. And he's either an incredibly talented man with a wide-ranging and eclectic career path and an uncanny ability to switch from an American to an English accent, or there are just a lot of Dave Franks on the internet, and I could have used the help seeing the correct photos. Nonetheless, I did get the correct Dave, the correct Brave Dave. I almost said super. And that's who we've got today. This Brave Dave Frank is a mental health warrior and the chief content officer for White Flag. It's a platform. It's a peer-to-peer platform. That's our latest weapon in the fight against many of those mental health ailments we're facing today. We talked quite a bit about his journey with ADHD and substance abuse. How he also discusses how alcohol and drug abuse are very similar in nature to the characteristics you would find in ADD and ADHD, and how those with one often suffer the other. Now, he also discusses how he found success in certain career fields and not so much in others, but they figured out his talents and his passions, and how that led him to White Flag. He discusses that and a whole bunch more. So, without further ado, Brave Dave. Dave, welcome to Point of Impact. I'm so glad you're here. I'm looking forward to this conversation for a while.
I'm really happy to be here, Aaron. We've been in talks for a while, and I've learned so much about your story, and this is what we like to do is connect and share stories. So it's great to be here today.
Well, it's funny. We're talking about ADD, and we had a little conversation before we start recording, and I remember that I've got, I don't know, mild ADD. I've never really been tested for it, but we started talking and I got so sidetracked that I forgot to ask if my eyeballs were screwed in straight or my camera was pointing in the right direction, all that buddy check stuff. So
yeah,
hopefully,
everything looks great on your end, and no judgment here because that happens to me about 46 times a day. So I'll have one thing in mind, and then I have to revisit whatever it was that even got me to that train of thought in the first place. So,
well, talk about getting sidetracked. How about trying to do a little background research on a guy named Dave Frank?
Super unique name, I know.
So, I'm trying to do a little background on you, so I have some decent questions to ask. And there's even, because through your LinkedIn, I saw you have a website and YouTube and all that. I am Brave Dave, and I start looking for one. I get derailed by how many brave Daves there are out there in the world. So, well, congratulations to all the courageous Davids. Uh, but I'm watching YouTube videos about mountain climbing guides in England. Anyways, I did
Yeah.
catch something I believe is you, the ADD song.
Yeah, the ADHD song. I love that. That was I spent a lot of time trying to make content that because I was late diagnosed ADHD, and I realized that had it not been for more accessible information, more digestible information about things like ADHD, I never would have known. And I was like, you know what, we'll do like a little song parody. And this was after many attempts at like educational content and inspirational content and long form discussions on the topic. And that one just exploded. And it was just like that reminder of like the Bill Nye effect, right? Like the more fun it is, the more people are willing to hear about that kind of information. And just that stupid, silly little song had so much feedback from people saying, thank you so much for all the validation behind what that experience is like. And that was, that was pretty much the entire underscore to what my social media experience was just a bunch of silly, goofy stuff that had a lot more lasting impact than I had ever anticipated.
Well, I tell you what, you're definitely making an impact nowadays. You're creating content, and I'd like to find out a lot more about how uh, you connected with Johnny and White created a White Flag app, and what that's doing for uh, for people today, and how you're connecting people with uh, all sorts of mental, emotional afflictions. But let's back up a little bit and tell me a little bit about your journey and what was like coming up. ADD, ADHD.
Yeah, for sure. So again, I was late diagnosed, so there was always an ADHD experience, but I didn't have, the mental connection between knowing what it was and knowing what about my life was that. So all throughout my childhood, I was homeschooled, and that made things a lot easier to not notice, because things like being easily distracted with outside environments, or not having enough time to have physical or mental breaks. When you're homeschooled, you have a lot of these advantages that may let things like ADHD go under the radar, because you have a lot of these at-home advantages. So as I got into public school, which was in middle school, every year that progressed, I mean, as you know, school gets harder each year. The responsibilities increase, the level of learning increases, what you're learning, becomes more difficult. And every year that passed in my public education, I went from like the smartest kid, in school, to one that was like, he knows what he's talking about, but I wouldn't copy off of his tests. You know what I mean? Um, and that like slow progression was, I figured it was just me, having a disinterest in school. And looking back now, I can see it's like anything. The more responsibilities you add, the more elements that you add into something, the more likely it is that, something like ADHD or autism or any kind of, mental condition, or even, physical impairment is going to be more noticeable in your own life, because there's more that can disrupt it. So I had this track set in mind for myself, which is really in line with the whole point of your podcast. But, like I had this idea about what I was going to be. I was going to be a music major. I was going to be, music performance major. I got a full ride to college for music performance. And that was what I was going to do. It was all laid out in front of me. And in college, even knowing that my family had a history of addiction, I still went out to college parties and drank and, joined a fraternity and, put myself in a lot of positions where alcohol was readily available. And developed an alcohol problem, and an alcohol problem turned into a drug problem. And those things turned into a disinterest in college and dropping out of college and just, layering on those issues to where I was, drunk or high every day, pretty much all the time. That was my life from 19 or 20, into my late 20s. And, you hear people tell you, hey, look out, you have a history of addiction in your family, or look out, addiction doesn't discriminate. And we've, I was a 90s baby, so I grew up with things like, McGruff the Crime Dog and the DARE program. And we're so sick and tired of hearing about how drugs are bad that, I think too much awareness desensitizes you to these kind of things. And I just fell right into it. All the things they were warning about, I fell right into, and really, really messed my life up pretty bad. All the things that I've been on track for, I just exploded. Done. That wasn't my life trajectory anymore. And every day, every month, every year that passed, my standard for myself had lowered. And I think that is one reason that a lot of people that deal with addiction or alcoholism or, anything in that realm, as long as they have someone that they can consider below them, they think that they're not doing the worst that they could be doing. Like, okay, I may do a lot of drugs, but I'm not homeless. You know what I mean? And if as long as there's someone that we can compare ourselves to, in addiction, we feel like we're not at our rock bottom yet. And that's what I did. At that time, I had a really weird, conflated, warped ego about myself, about other people. And I used this mental comparison of myself to say, well, I guess it could be worse. So I'm doing fine. And the more normal that becomes for you, in addiction, the more easier it is to accept those things about yourself. In the beginning, you feel these little pangs of guilt, like, this isn't me, I shouldn't be doing this. But the more you're exposed to it, the more you're around other people that, that have the same lifestyle as you, the more normal it becomes. And the more you accept yourself as, I'm just a drug addict. This is just what I do. I fast forwarding a little bit, I had two kids, two very young kids. And, being in a family, with my partner, with my two kids, I wasn't running around doing drugs every day, but I was still trying to manage addiction and this like cushy family lifestyle at the same time. And it was just not working, because addiction is a progressive disease. And it's not just progressive in your tolerance to substances. It's not just progressive in, the deterioration of your mental health or of your physical health. It's progressive in the sense that you need more. And however you're able to sustain this double life that you're trying to lead, starts to deteriorate. Everything about what you're trying to do progressively gets worse. And that's what happened. It got to a point where, my wife and I had a fight, and I had went out of the house and fell asleep on somebody's couch. And she sent me a picture of my kids that day. They were young. They were 1 and 3 or 2 and 4. And they had on these really weird, long, mismatched socks. And they were smiling on the sidewalk. They were about to go to school. And she said, you missed crazy sock day. And they wanted you to see their crazy socks since you weren't here to see it. And that was my rock bottom. Out of all the unspeakable things I had ever done, out of all the horrible, awkward moments in my life due to addiction, that was my rock bottom. Was the lopside where the bad part of my life had a majority hold on the good part of my life. And I said, that's unacceptable, because this is the one thing that actually matters to me. So I went into AA for a 12-step program. And I remember hearing people talk and thinking to myself, these are a bunch of nut jobs. Like, their stories they're telling are so out there. Like, I won't even say it on here. The things that they would do for alcohol, or the thing, I've been arrested 17 times, like just crazy stuff that I was like nowhere near. I wasn't that far. Again, I had people to compare myself to, right? I wasn't that far down, the slide of how messed up my life was due to addiction. But the more that I went to these meetings, and the more that even that first meeting, the more I listened to those people, I realized that everything they were saying about themselves, even if it wasn't the same life story, it was me. How they felt about other people, how they interacted with other people, how they felt about themselves was all me. And I was too focused on the superficial outer layer of how, their life actually was. But the more I realized how much like me they truly were, I realized that it doesn't matter how different your stories may be. The core essence of these people was the same as I was. In the program, they call it everybody gets on the elevator at different floors, but we're all on the same elevator. We're all going the same direction. We're all having that same shared experience, just in different ways. And that changed me when I truly realized how many people were exactly like me in that way. That really changed my perspective, not only, in the fact that I could be helped, but how other regular people could help me. That I didn't have to, because again, this ego situation that I had, I thought I was smarter than everybody else. I thought that my experiences were more unique than everybody else, and that other people didn't have any value to help me in my problems. I was the only one that could fix my own problems. And hearing the value in their life experience not only helped me through recovery, and I'm 5 years sober now, but helped me realize the importance of other people's story and what it does for people. That was a really big deal for me. So, going through sobriety, obviously I found a new way in life that gave me purpose again. And I'm better off now in recovery after addiction than I was before I even developed an addiction problem to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, after the fact, it's almost like I'm more grateful to be me after going through all that than had it never happened at all. And that led to the second half of my life of being on social media and sharing my mental health experiences and addiction experiences, finding the correlation between addiction and ADHD, and finding out about my ADHD diagnosis and learning more about myself that way. And that all led to White Flag. They reached out to me and they said, "Hey, the work that you do on here is really cool, and we'd like you to, make a video for this app." And they were really, really small at the time. They didn't have a whole lot of people on the app. They didn't have a large team, and I gave them a discount, to make a video because they were a startup company. And it was an immediate infatuation between their message, their team, their story, and mine. And I just realized that, as fun as social media had been, it wasn't my priority anymore as my primary method of delivering my message. It was working with White Flag to show people how important peer support is, because I was a firm believer that it was not important, and then it completely changed my life. So working with White Flag to give peer support in mass to, the entire nation, now Canada, soon the world, became my new professional priority. Family always comes first, but the thing that I have my own personal, professional priority for became giving peer support to people, because it should be a more readily available option.
Congratulations on 5 years sobriety. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Your story has so many corollaries with my own. It's strangely. uh, um, parallel. Uh, Going through school, coming up, the difference there is that I was great. I was a great test taker. I just didn't
Yeah.
pay attention in class or do my homework. So,
Right.
uh, I if they like you said, if somebody asked me questions, I would be able to tell them all about the material, but I wouldn't sit down and do my homework. You know, it's all funny also about going to college, finding a fraternity, uh, finding a party. There is a party somewhere. It's like that saying, "It's 5 o'clock somewhere." There's a party
Right.
somewhere. 5 days, 7 days a week in college.
Oh
So
yeah,
I found that out very quickly. But
definitely.
that also this also reminded me of your the internet search. Did you know there is also a Dave Frank who's a best, I think, a very well accomplished pianist on YouTube? Uh,
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. I've seen it. There was and I think it maybe it's like the social media aspect where a little bit of vanity comes in, and you're like, I have to know where I am out there and what other Dave Franks I'm competing with in the world. Um, there's a few out there. Jason David Frank pretty much takes up a majority of the searches. Also, one of the former Power Rangers, he shows up a lot.
yes. Okay. So yeah, there were. Speaking of flags, there were plenty of false flags trying to find out more about you. So appreciate you sharing your story, the first person. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
you mentioned the connection between ADD and addiction.
Mm.
Is there what do they call it? Neurodiverse people with neurodiverse minds have um, more. Are they more susceptible to addiction?
Yes. Yes. I wish I could remember the exact statistic off the top of my head. Um, but the comorbidity rate between, for instance, ADHD and addiction is massive. It's too high, and it doesn't surprise me at all when I meet people in recovery that have ADHD, or when I meet people that have ADHD that either have addiction issues or have been in recovery, because the way people with ADD and ADHD, our brains are wired, it's there is an issue with impulse control. There is an issue with our ability to regulate our feelings and emotions. There is an issue with how our brain decides what is right and wrong. So it does not surprise me at all when you AA is not the definitive source on alcoholism and recovery, but it's by far one of the more notable sources for information. And if you read, there's an AA handbook where it's more anecdotal. It's the book of Alcoholics Anonymous that was written by the founder, used to help people with their addiction to alcohol, right? And he worked with doctors and stuff, but primarily the book is filled with stories of the original members of the group and their explanation about why alcoholics are the way that they are. And if you were to take out the word alcoholic and replace it with person with ADHD in there, for instance, um, all the things that you hear about how people with ADHD are, there's so much that parallels between those two. And it's, again, half of it is, I think the way that, our brains are wired. Um, the how our prefrontal cortex works differently than other people's, that affects things, again, like our, impulsivity, that directly correlate to addiction. All neurodiverse people, if you look through the DSM-5, which gives all of the defining characteristics for all of those, psychological traits, for all of those conditions. you would be surprised how many of them you could see where addiction falls into those categories for so many of those, classifiable conditions. Um, anyone that is curious on that subject, there's way more out there than I could ever justifiably talk about, but I highly recommend looking at it because for me, it was good to know about my life as an alcoholic and as an addict. And it was good to know about my life as someone with ADHD. But to be able to draw those lines together, I went from 2D to 3D in terms of the way that I thought about myself and the way that my brain works and how I treat myself.
We've talked about other Dave Franks and their occupations. What was your chosen occupation before joining up with White Flag?
Yeah. So from when I first dropped out of college, I had just turned 19 because I only made it through a year. And my first job then was delivering Chinese food, and I was horrible at it. I was awful. And I got to the point where I just wasn't fast enough, and I have a really shitty sense of direction anyway. And I got to the point where they were like, you can't work here anymore. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. So I joined a call center, and I was really good at it. And it was easy to sit down and work. There were a lot of people to talk to. And I progressed through that call center world really fast, really quickly, to the point that I got noticed frequently about, the kind of work I was doing. And it led me to become a trainer. And that trainer job let me travel the world. I went to the Philippines frequently. I went to Belize frequently to train overseas call centers. I honestly, before White Flag, I thought for sure that this operations, analytics, call center, white collar, tight tie situation was what I was going to retire on, like that whole world. And then it just wasn't. I love that. I love that whole world. That's all me. But a lot of the things that I learned from there really helped me out, with White Flag, and I was able to use a lot of those skills there. But yeah, not anything inspirational at all. Just a lot of call center, pencil pushing, corporate stuff.
What did you learn? It sounds like uh, it was just your energy had to be redirected in the right way. Right? Something had to capture your interest, and it sounded like the call center job did just that. So, what did you learn out of that experience?
With the call center?
Well, yeah, finding success versus previously having these struggles, with your.
Right.
So, what do you attribute that to?
So my boss at the time, that call center experience started with one company, and then one of the executives at that company started his own. And during one of our trips together, because he was always who I traveled with. He told me, he said, "Hey, we're gonna do something big together after we're both done at this company. So I want you to come with me." And he was my first true professional mentor on so many levels. His name was also Dave. And he is a very important person in my life, and I still talk to him today, but he was a true professional mentor. He was a friend. He was a brother. And he taught me so much about how to hold myself. Because we were in meetings with a lot of important people, and we went to a lot of important meetings and did a lot of important things, and flew places and traveled internationally. And so much of, what I considered to be like the big scary world that I hadn't really known. He was there for all of it. And I attribute a lot of my levels of confidence and how I hold myself and how I talk to people and just so many things that if I had encountered them on my own, I would have failed at, I think, in some way. I owe to him. He was a very instrumental part of how I was able to become any level of professional at all. Uh, and he was an army veteran, and some of that I think kind of rubbed off on me in some ways about the way that he operates and the way that he thinks and his punctuality to things, and what he considers to be respectful and not respectful. He wasn't like a super militant guy or anything, but you could tell so much of the way that he operated from his experience in the military rubbed off on me too, in a really good way.
Sounds like making the right connections, being around those the people that bring you up, teach you, and share their experience with you is something that helps everybody, including those with ADD and addiction issues.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
when does white flag enter the when does white flag enter the picture?
So white flag was there's this really common attribute in people with ADHD where if they do something for too long, or if things about what they're doing change, if it doesn't feed dopamine to their brain in the same way that it always has, it's very easy for that element in their life to just become dismissible. That's why people with ADHD have a lot of relationships that end abruptly, or jobs that they suddenly quit, or things that they, hobbies they really used to like that they then just ditch and sell all the supplies to, because we're moving on to the next thing in our brain. And I think that kind of happened with me with the call center stuff. There was a lot of changes happening. I was working at home. I wasn't getting to travel as much. I wasn't in an office every day with people. And so a lot of the sensory stuff that kept me motivated, the being around people, there's always this big emergency that I have to solve, this fire I have to fight. When a lot of that kind of calmed down, I was becoming disinterested, and, idle hands are the devil's playthings. I had more time to realize, like, I don't know, this doesn't feel super influential to me. On the whole, I feel like I could be doing something just either more fun or, more impactful in some way. I want something that's cooler to talk about at parties than, I'm a director of operations for a call center. I just wanted something that was more stimulating. And, my wife had convinced me to do social media, and that was fun because social media doesn't have an end game. There's no finish line to social media. You can always have more followers. You can always get on more platforms. You can always make more content. So that always kept me entertained. And when I started doing well at it, there was this sense of like, well, I can just keep going as long as I want. There's no reason to stop. I'll just keep going and getting bigger. So when White Flag found me through social media, it was a good answer for a lot of the questions I'd had for multiple reasons. One, because White Flag eventually, in contrast to social media, showed me that White Flag did have a finish line, which is to give peer support to everybody that we possibly can. It showed me that it was a more healthy direction for me, because social media is all designed to make me want to do more for longer. And that's not good for my brain. I've learned that multiple times already through substance abuse, through untreated ADHD. Unlimited access to everything all the time is not good for me. So White Flag showing up because of social media really felt like a chapter end and beginning. And that's why I left. I just left social media in the past few months, and that's the reason I gave everyone. I said, I did what I set out here to do, which was to do something that I thought was impactful until something that was more impactful and felt more like me came along. And I couldn't have designed a better transition between two life events. So I'm not going to try to. That's it. Social media is done now. I'm going to focus on White Flag. And it was nice to see that happen.
What kind of content were you creating at first?
In the very beginning, it was all parenting. Because parenting content, half of it was, kind of like we're doing, like talking heads, and advice and blogging and stuff. And then the other half was all skits and, little shorts that you made, and that's what I did at first. Was I made videos telling people about reasons why my kids have been upset recently. And I made videos of skits reenacting things that my kids have done. And again, silly, stupid little videos, but people said, oh my God, my kid does that too. I don't feel like my kid is crazy. I don't feel like I'm not parenting correctly. There are other people that have kids just like mine. I feel more normal now. And I was like, great, because you guys do that for me just as much as I do it for you. The parenting thing was my bread and butter in the beginning, and the main motivator for why I explored other aspects of my life, the mental health side, sharing about the addiction, finding out about ADHD and sharing that information. It all started from helping parents realize that their life may be crazy, but it's the normal kind.
After these messages, we'll be right back. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this episode, Extraordinary Delights, EODFudge.com. Extraordinary Delights is a disabled veteran, family-owned small business making handcrafted fudge and other sweet treats for the chocolate-loving patriots just like you. Go to EODFudge.com and check out some of our delicious flavors like triple threat chocolate with or without walnuts, mint dark chocolate, strawberry and creamy white chocolate, or my personal favorite, American Pick-Me-Up, an all-American version of tiramisu. While you're there, go to the apparel store and check out our awesome t-shirts, polos, and the baddest tactical apron on the market. You see me wear on the TikTok show, Aaron Hale's Cook Without Looking. So, right now, go over to EODFudge.com and pick out some fudge, other sweet treats for that patriot in your life with a sweet tooth. That's EODFudge.com. EODFudge.com. And now, back to the show. Well, yeah, there are so many times where somebody will ask me how my boys are. I've got 3 of them, 13-year-old and identical twin 5-year-olds. And any given time, I think at least one of them is a sociopath. So, it's like, why did you do that? I don't know. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. Am I going crazy, or why is that knife out? Anyways.
Yeah.
What were you doing with that thing? Anyways, yeah, I can go off on another tangent there about just what kids get into, but that's so funny. So you're acting, doing these skits, the sketches of acting as they would be.
Yeah. I would wear I would wear little bows in my head, in my hair, and I guess there's a desirable element to seeing this, 32-year-old, 270-pound man put a bow in his hair and act like a 6-year-old, I would always, the thing that I wanted to do was, I didn't want to legitimately act like a 6-year-old. I wanted to speak as an adult, as what I thought my 6-year-old was thinking. One, because it's funnier that way, but also because I think it's more digestible for people that way. There's another creator, her name's Menzennial, and she does the exact same thing, but she does it from an emotional standpoint. So she interprets like tantrums, or what we consider to be tantrums, and, stop
Mm-hmm.
throwing a fit and just shape up. When in reality, she lets you know through these skits where she's like explaining what it's like to feel like that. And she like cries on camera, and it's very emotional to see someone explain what it feels like to be 3. And, that's when I was like, this is good. I'm glad that there's people like us that make content that, speak like adults for children, because I think it makes it, you appreciate it more that way.
Yeah, it's super fun having two go through the same stages at the same time, uh, and bouncing
Yeah,
off
you don't
each
even get a practice round with with one of them. You got to have it both at the same time. That's nuts.
and bouncing off bouncing their own energies off each other, and then becoming either arch enemies or like super evil twin, like Wonder Power twins unite,
Yeah.
form of chaos. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's that sounds like it's a whole lot of fun, and a whole lot of parents probably appreciate that content. And that is what attracted White Flag.
Yeah. So actually, no. So White Flag came around, uh, near the beginning of like my transition into including, mental health and ADHD content. But a lot of people that had found me, um, were still along for the ride from the parenting stuff. So people would say, "I love your mental health stuff, but I've been around since the parenting stuff." Um, and that's another reason that I liked White Flag so much, was because White Flag, you don't have one checkbox that you can select. You don't just select "I have depression." You can say, "I have depression. I'm also a disabled mom. I don't just have anxiety. I also have autism, and I'm a veteran." Because that's what we found out, was that there were, like these, there's not even a special word for it. It's just people have multiple facets to themselves. There's more about a person than if they're just a parent or if they just have ADHD. And so I found this community of people that appreciated the fact that not only did they like what I was saying about mental health, or, about my experiences with it, but they were also parents too, and you know, that's a hard thing to deal with when you're a parent and you have to deal with anything else in life. It's whatever you're dealing with on hard mode, because you have, tiny humans to keep alive.
Mm-hmm.
So the person that worked for White Flag at the time had followed me since my parenting content, and then had kind of watched me evolve into making mental health content as well.
I'm not just a chief content officer, I'm also a customer.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. We make the Rogaine comparison all the time, because it's true. Our whole team is filled with people that, if we didn't work here, we'd just be on it instead.
But let's go a little deeper. What is White Flag?
So White Flag is a free to download, free to use app. It's available to everyone in the United States and Canada, and we will expand throughout 2025 and 26. It is free, anonymous, peer-to-peer support. So, again, for those that don't know exactly what peer support is, it's just two people on equal footing that communicate with each other to help each other. You have mental health professionals that have clients. That is not peer support. That is clinical support. Peer support is just two folks like we're doing right now communicating. And you get on White Flag. You sign up with a phone number. You choose things about yourself that you struggle with, like if you have ADHD, anxiety, depression, trauma, whatever it is. And then also things about who you are, because that's just as important to the experience that you're having. If you're in the queer community, if you're a veteran, if you're a parent, if you're a college student, whatever it may be, you can also select things about if you're in recovery or not, so people can see how long you've been in recovery. And when you have that profile built out, all you have to do is raise your flag at the press of a button if you want to talk to someone, if you feel like you're in need of support, and someone can reach out to you. or you can answer a flag if you feel like you can give support to somebody else. It's a two-way street that we make accessible to anyone at any time, anywhere. You're just as eligible to help someone as you are to be helped, which is the beauty of what peer support is.
My is a blind, deaf veteran with a sleep disorder, ADD, parents, and a parent. My Venn diagram probably looks like the Olympic symbol, but
Hey, get on. We have no limits for check boxes, Aaron. You are more than welcome. Check them all.
yeah, I could jump into just about any chat group and be able to pass. So this is peer to peer. You're talking when you open up this app.
Yep.
Is it like a FaceTime thing? Is it how does it work? How do you pair these two people, and how's it work?
So it's at the moment it's just text based, because we're all about equality, equal footing, making sure everyone feels equally comfortable. And there are a lot of people out there that if you were to say, you ever been texting somebody and then, they try to communicate with you in a different way and you're like, I'm not ready for that. I'm not in a place where I want to do that. There's a reason that I texted you,
Sure.
So we don't want to throw anybody off guard. So it's all text based right now. It's all one-on-one conversation. It's all anonymous in your one-on-one conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So when you raise your flag, you become part of a list, a scrollable list that's accessible to everybody else on the app. And when you specifically, Aaron, look at the list, you might find that veterans are higher up on your list because, our app is trying to prioritize people that the app knows you will have more in common with. You can help anybody, but the list is always sorted by compatibility and need for assistance. So that way, if you're trying to help someone as quickly as you can, the people in the top half of the list just have more in common with you. In the future, one of the first big additions that we'll make to the app is having group chats, kind of like how they used to do in old school chat rooms, where the group chats were labeled by category, like moms with ADHD, or whatever it is, themed rooms for people, and then you can go in and out of the rooms as you please. Because a lot of people, I think, would like to be in a supportive environment, be around other people like them, but maybe they're not ready to have a full one-on-one conversation with somebody yet. Maybe they're not quite there. So to have, these themed rooms related to people, that you can just kind of go, just be in the room and read what other people are saying to each other, and just be a part of that group, but not feel the pressure of having to talk to somebody one-on-one. That'll be our next big addition, to give people this ability to be around others and have that peer support in a group setting, without having to commit to a one-on-one conversation. But right now it's all text-based one-on-one chats that you have with each other.
I would worry about the potential for bad advice, or is there some sort of test, like a red flag that goes up that says you're treading into territory for professional help, licensed help, that kind of thing?
Right. So there are a lot of fail safes between the point that they join to the point that maybe somebody feels like they aren't helping someone anymore. So when you sign up for the app, you're required to use a legitimate phone number to register. The reason being is that if you make it eligible for people with a Google phone number or an email to sign up, that's how you get trolls and bots. Because if someone comes on and says something horrible to somebody and then you ban them, you ban their email, they just go make a new email and put 2 on the end and
Mm-hmm.
start the process all over. Most people, 99.9% of the time, we've never had it happen yet. Have we banned someone's phone number and then they go get a new phone number? That's quite the dedication to trolling, and it just doesn't happen. So the phone number gateway has been a big help. After that, the when you're in conversations with someone, and if I feel like the person that I'm talking to, again, is venturing into a conversation that I just don't have the ability to provide more support to you than I already have, or if I feel like maybe you have a level of suicidal ideation that is higher than what is considered okay for just being in a group or just being in a one-on-one chat for peer support. Um, in the beginning, those people were getting reported, and we're like, "Oh, they're not reporting them. They're saying this is the only button I have to let you know that something not good is happening, and we need to get this person help." So we developed a second button that you can press that sends an alert to us to let us know that this person is going through a particularly difficult crisis that we may need to know about, and also simultaneously provides that person that's struggling with a lot of resources, phone numbers to call, shelters to contact, organizations, for specific niches and demographics of people to help them with those particular things. Because it's not somebody's job to have 46 resources memorized. They don't know what that person needs specifically, but we have that button now for people that are in that situation where they feel like they don't want to try and give advice if this feels too serious, but they have a way to give something more if they feel like that person needs more. On a more organic note, though, just 2 people talking to each other. I remember when I first joined AA, for instance, and I thought to myself, why are we letting drunks talk to drunks? This feels like a cesspool of mistakes waiting to happen, right? And it wasn't until my sponsor now, it wasn't until I heard my sponsor speak. This guy was born and raised in like Southeast Kentucky, had this major thick accent. He used to shoot up dope in motel rooms with hookers. And he is the reason that I am who I am through recovery. If it had not been for the man that, has told me, he said, I don't know much about much, but I know that I don't know what I don't know till I know it. And like that just told me that he did not need to have a certification in order to help me.
Mm-hmm.
I needed his lived experience, and that's what he gave me. And peer support programs like AA that have been around for decades, sometimes even centuries. White Flag didn't invent peer support. We just made it available in an app and made it anonymous for people. So that was our biggest confidence going into this, was that this already has a proven track record of working. We just needed to give it to people in a medium they were used to, which is a social platform.
Well, that sounds great. How is it progressing? How is it being accepted? Is it becoming popular? Is it growing?
Yes. Yeah, we're doing great so far. So we've grown over 10 times in size within the past year and a half. We've had, when you're in a startup, so much happens in such a short period of time. And then afterwards you have a conversation. You're like, shoot, I should have mentioned that cool thing that happened. I'll never be able to remember it all, but we've had so many important partners come in that we've got to work with. We've had so many important organizations that we've paired with that we got to work with. We just had Colton Underwood sign on with us as not only as a team member, but a spokesperson. And we've been featured in Vanity Fair and People. So we're starting to gain some traction that's been really helpful, and we're starting to be seen by some influential people that want to help, people just like you that say, I want to make sure other people know about this. I just, I want us to be involved somehow. So that's been really cool to see. It has been well received. And even in the instance where it's not well received, we're totally okay with that, because the people that are not receiving it well have been through this age of mental health resources where they've been deceived, where healthcare has skyrocketed, where we've been given mental health care apps that turned out that they were, selling data, or, that they were overcharging their customers, or that they would say, yes, we'll link you up with a therapist, but it's text only and they have a 500 word limit for each session. So there's a lot of not super awesome resources out there for a lot of people that already have trust issues, from other things in their life. So all of the negative feedback that we get, not only do we understand it, but we appreciate it because it helps us make the app better. What are they afraid of? What are they scrutinous of? What do they not like? What do they find unaccessible or inaccessible? Anything that they bring to our attention like that, we do our very best to turn it into the opposite. The app is meant for them, and their feedback, even if they're not a user, their feedback as someone that could and should have it, is what makes the app better.
Yeah, it's probably taboo to say right now, but sometimes therapy is not the answer. I think there's a book out now called Bad Therapy. And it looks at the negative side of all the advent of going to counseling, and instead of, maybe it's that bootstrapping or going to your community or alternatives to, like you mentioned, the online, phone counseling apps. I don't know yet. I haven't read the book.
Yeah.
It's in my queue, but it's something. I grew up I'm a Gen Xer. I grew up before there were cameras on cell phones. In fact, I came up before there were cell phones. So
right.
All this, it seems very, very strange how we're, ever since 2007, when the iPhone came out, how incredibly different our world has changed, from the internet to smartphones to AI and all that. And it's very complex to add on top of our own human foibles.
Yeah.
So maybe what we do need is, every once in a while, just a little human contact, even if it is virtual. Every once in a while, just talking to another human and who's been through the same experience.
Yeah, it's really difficult. And like you said, it's hard enough for anything else when you realize how many options there are, and if it doesn't work this way, then you need to try it this way. I mean, think about, working on your car or trying to grow a garden. There's so many things that go wrong from point A to point B, that frustrates you. Now it's the same problem that we have, but we're trying to not feel the way that we feel. That's really difficult. I stopped using the therapy that I was using and was attempting to get a new source for therapy. And I was using this company and it just wasn't working. I had 2 canceled appointments back to back that were not of my doing. And I got so frustrated, and I wrote this nasty email to the company and I canceled everything. And I'm thinking to myself, I have the privilege of knowledge of how this works. I have a decent village around me that I can go to for peer support in the meantime. I know the struggles of how this works and knowing that not everything's going to be successful the first time. And I still lashed out at some random stranger and walked away from a mental health resource. And it was an important moment for me because it gave me perspective to the people that maybe are trying to cross their toe into the line of mental wellness for the very first time, or for the people that have been trying for 10 years unsuccessfully and are, just filled with resentment and trust issues about the whole process. Um, there are there are so many options, and I think what I like about White Flag and several other resources, we're not the only people that do this, but we don't try to paint ourselves as the end all be all, get White Flag and everything will be okay option. Nobody should ever just have one option that they like when it comes to their mental wellness, because any therapist will tell you therapy is not the only solution that you need, or the perfect solution. Even medication is not the only perfect solution that you need. It is a lot of trial and error to find what really works for you to put you in a life that you're really happy living, if you're struggling like that. And so, White Flag may not be the end all be all option, but we're at least a simple, immediate one. There's so much complexity in healthcare and mental health care that it's nice to be part of the toolbox that's just there right now and doesn't require a whole lot of effort.
Well, that's very well said. But our allotted time that will be covered by insurance is nearing an end. Uh, before we before we get into our final segment, is there anything on the horizon? What's lighting you up? What's getting you most excited now?
Oh, in my personal life, I'm focused on family. I'm focused on White Flag. And when I have time, I've been working on children's books. So those will come down the road, and it'll be nice to, again, like the social media side of things was great, but now it's nice to have like a tangible, constructive personal project like writing children's books that I can explore, that it feels a little bit more healthy to do. So that'll be fun on the personal side. With White Flag, there's so much, Aaron. There's so much coming down the road that I'm so excited for. That we're going to start doing expansion of the app, expansion to, what countries we're available in, expansion to the number of people that will be talking about it on our behalf that we get to work with. Just so much in the world of White Flag that I can't wait, for people to see.
That's great. Our final segment is the countdown to impact. And it goes like this: 3, 2, 1. 3 books, 2 people. No, I'm sorry. 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person that have all made an impact in your life.
Oh, okay. So, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. That was a fantastic book. That is a memoir from the founder of Nike. And the reason that I like that memoir in particular is because he did so many things wrong. It was such a ragtag group of people that were basically scraping by the skin of the skin of the skin of their teeth, just barely hanging on. And it ended up turning into something really cool. So it was cool to see an imperfect experience turn into something so colossal. Creativity Inc. Is the story of one of the co-founders of Pixar. And he is just such a gentle and understanding voice that prioritizes creativity in the success of your professional and personal life. So I really liked that book. Let's see, what else do I have on the shelves? You know what? I'm going to include the handbook for Alcoholics Anonymous, just because I think it's worth a read to better understand how an alcoholic functions. And you might find something about yourself in there. You might find out something about somebody else that you know, if you know someone else that's having a hard time with alcoholism. I think it's just a good read in general to get to learn more about a person's mind that you might have not known. So those are my 3 books.
That last one was a new one to be recommended on this show, but I think it's a pretty good idea. All right, 2 quotes or lessons learned.
Let's see. Lessons learned. Oh, there's a lot of good ones. We'll go with, we talked a lot about one of my previous mentors, Dave. One of my favorite things he ever said to me was we walked into a VIP room that we were not supposed to have access to. And I was like, Dave, I don't think we're supposed to be here. And he just looked at me dead in the eyes and he said, no matter where you go or what you do, act like you've been here before. And that has carried me so far. There's a couple other people that say that, that I ran into that I, hear them say that too. And it's so important because you're going to be so many places that you haven't been. And it just always helps to carry yourself like you have. It'll make life a lot easier. My final one, or my second one, is something my grandfather used to say, which is you're either rich enough to pay someone to do it or you're smart enough to do it yourself. And that was always important to me because I've very rarely have I been rich enough to pay someone to do it. And I refuse to believe that I'm not smart enough to figure it out. And I think that was his implication too. It was never, maybe you're smart enough to figure it out. No, he said, you're either rich enough to pay him or you're smart enough to figure it out yourself. And that's carried me a long way as well.
I like that. Now, one person, and you've already mentioned a few, one person that's made an impact in your life.
There's so many good ones. We'll go with my sponsor. My sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. His name is Steve Huff. And that man went into hell and came out on the other side of it and then found me and brought me through it too. It is, we always talk about breaking the cycle. He continued the cycle that you want to continue, of going through what you went through, having someone help you through, and then pulling someone else through because of what you learned. If it wasn't for Steve, I don't know if I'd be here today. And I certainly know that I wouldn't have the respect and appreciation for peer support that has led me to this moment today here on your show.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you being here today. And if anybody wants to find out more about you, about White Flag, just want to get in contact, how do they find you?
Yeah, for sure. You can check us out at whiteflagapp.com. All of our info about the app is on there. You can find information about our team, and all of our contact info is on there as well. So if you wanted to reach out to me or any of our team members, you can reach us there.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Aaron. Had a great time.